What's up, it's Cinema Shogun here with an update on Evan Cockerham. I've actually been in contact with Evan's brother, who is, by the way, a very kind, well-spoken young man. I just want to add that in there. But I've been in contact with him, and if you know anything about me, or if you know anything about how things go behind the scenes on my channel, unlike 99% of other YouTubers, I do not reach out to the families of missing people or the families of people who are involved in like a true crime case. I don't take things that far. I try not to be too hands-on, because I don't want people to think that I'm using these people's families for any gain of my own. And I know a lot of people manipulate these families into coming onto their YouTube channels and speaking with them so they can get their own attention and clout and stuff like that. I'm not accusing everyone of doing that, but there's a lot of channels out there that do that. I typically do not reach out to anyone involved in these cases. Sometimes they reach out to me. Evan's brother reached out to me. Typically, like I said, I don't really correspond with a lot of the families in these cases, and I prefer things that way because I try not to intrude too much into people's lives. But I've spoken with Evan's brother. There's also a Twitter Spaces not that long ago where Evan's brother and his mother cleared up a lot of the information that was out there about Evan's disappearance because the story was kind of weird. But now that I heard from them and I know a little bit more about Evan, everything is really starting to make sense now. Now, they provided me with a bullet point, of information that they want me to go over with you all. But first, I want to talk about the initial story and where we are at now, because this will clear things up for a lot of you all as well. I don't even know really where to begin. Let's begin with the use of words. In a lot of the viral posts that are out there, it says that Evan was carjacked and basically held captive for days. They used the word carjacked because you only get a certain amount of, letters you can use in a post or a certain amount of words you can use in a post. It's an easy way to describe what kind of happened to Evan, but it's not exactly what happened to Evan, if that makes sense to you all. To really explain what happened to Evan, it would take a while. I'm going to explain to you all in this video, but it would take a while. It's something that you wouldn't want to put in a post that you're just trying to get, brief information out there for people so they could try to find Evan. Well, Evan wasn't necessarily what you would maybe label as carjacked. If anything, he was kind of swindled, finessed in a way. Evan, from what I've heard, he's this really kind-hearted individual. Someone who doesn't like conflict. I don't want to use the word timid. I don't like using words for people who I don't know, but from the way they described him, he's a really peaceful individual. You understand? And he's someone who's not used to the streets, if you will. So while Evan was in LA, it appears that some junkie or something told Evan that, hey, I need help looking for my dog. Evan, being the kind-hearted young man that he is, and Evan not really knowing how people really are out there, Evan decided to help. And then next thing you know, it's days later, and it's like this dude has, control over his car. And I feel like a lot of it was intimidation, and there's people out there who have a hard time saying no. And there's swindlers out there that look for those type of people. A lot of times we call them city swindlers. You see, I've been fortunate enough to live both types of lifestyles. I understand the more laid back way of living, the country way of living, if you will. And I understand how fast paced the big city life can be as well. But often people from small towns, people who aren't really used to the big city life, they go to the big city and they get swallowed up. Because the people out there are a whole different breed. They're a whole different animal. And there are people out there that prey. They purposely prey on tourists and out-of-towners who aren't as street smart, if you will. So what started with, hey, can you help me look for my dog, ended up in basically this dude taking over Evan's vehicle. And I'm assuming from what I've heard about Evan that he just isn't the type of guy that was, going to necessarily get into a physical altercation with the guy. Maybe he was intimidated, scared. And then again, it's not like Evan is on his home turf at home. Evan's in LA. I know he was maybe somewhat familiar with LA. I'm not sure how familiar, but he's out there in this city, in this big city, if you will. And he even made some remarks to his mother about how the people were out there, and it's true. They will eat you up and spit you out. So, of course, the initial story that we heard about, Evan was carjacked, kidnapped, he broke free, called his mom, but didn't call 911. That's not necessarily how this situation played out at all. In my opinion, we don't know exactly what happened here, but it seems like Evan was finessed and swindled by a con man. And Evan finally got away from this situation because I think the dude finally fell asleep after being up for like 3 days on some type of substances. So the story, it's not the exact story that we've heard, but it's similar to that story, yet in my mind, it's way more understandable. Like, all of this makes sense now. In that Twitter Spaces, hearing more about Evan, it makes sense because I've seen things like this happen to people time and time again. You get eaten up and spitting out in the streets if you're not really from those areas and if you don't know how to operate in those areas. And there's people out there who purposely go outside every day for the sole purpose of trying to take advantage of kind-hearted individuals that may be gullible enough to extend a hand of help. And what it appears happened here is Evan extended a hand of help and it winded up going horribly wrong. And Evan winded up just getting finessed out of his vehicle and everything. Now, his vehicle was actually found. And from my understanding, there were some belongings in there that I don't believe belonged to Evan. And I believe Evan's bags were in the vehicle as well. Now, in my last video about this topic, I made a point because we know that Evan was out in the LA area. He was looking for somewhere to do yoga. He was looking for somewhere to meditate. He even told his mother that after this crazy situation that he wanted to go to the beach and meditate. Now, when I first heard that information and I hear that, someone's seeking out a place to meditate, somewhere to calm their mind, it immediately makes me think that maybe they're going through something themselves. Why are you seeking out a place to meditate if you aren't going through an internal crisis? So I believe that maybe Evan was going through some type of, stuff mentally. He was battling some type of demons inside, and he was actively looking for somewhere to go to battle these demons, to meditate, to do yoga. Who knows what Evan was going through? But after sitting in that Twitter Spaces and hearing more about Evan, it turns out that's totally Evan's vibe. Evan's that chill dude that when you're chilling around the campfire, you'll probably look at him and he's over there meditating. Evan's that guy. Evan wasn't looking for somewhere to meditate necessarily because he was going through a crisis of his own. That's just Evan's vibe. And the more I heard about Evan, he sounds like someone you would want to hang out with. A really cool, down-to-earth individual that's really in touch with nature, in touch with his surroundings. And I feel like Evan was on a journey to better learn about himself. So my initial thoughts of, Evan must have been going out here seeking out a place to meditate because he was going through something. I don't think that's the case anymore necessarily. Because like I said, that's what Evan was into. Evan was into meditating. Evan was into the outdoorsy type of stuff. I believe Evan lived for, I may be slightly off about the amount of time, but I think Evan was like living out in the wilderness on his own for like a month throughout periods of his life. So that's Evan's vibe. He's not even a social media type of guy. But I want to go over this bullet point that his family provided for me to go over for you all, so you all can get a better understanding of where we're at in this situation. November 22nd, Evan called from Flagstaff, Arizona. He was driving towards California, then on to Oregon. He blew a head gasket on his van in LA. On December 3rd, Evan called his mom from Facebook Messenger and said he was at the library in downtown LA. His mom offered to send him an old iPhone. Evan said he would check with the closest post office to get it mailed to him since he was traveling. On December 6th, Evan Facebook messaged again and said no on the phone, and that LA had... On December 6th, Evan Facebook messaged again and said no on the phone, and that LA had done a number on him, and he wanted to meditate and decompress on the beach. She asked if he was okay, and he said he didn't realize there were so many shady people out to pick your bones. And that's the exact quote from Evan that I was talking about. And that is the God honest truth. Like I said, I've been lucky enough to experience both ways of life. And it could be a real shock for someone who comes from a small town, or someone who, you know, I like in my situation, I'm someone who comes from the South. Where I'm from, you greet people when you walk past them in the street. There's a such thing as Southern hospitality. And then you go to these other cities where people get pissed off if you say hey to them. You know what I mean? So there's this culture shock sometimes for some people, and often people don't realize how many people are out to get you. It's a totally different way of life. A lot of times in these towns, in these country roads, your neighbors and the people you walk by on the street, they literally wish the best for you in life. They will help you with literally anything. Then you go out here in these big cities, and it's like everyone wants to pick at you. They want to get what they can get out of you. And I think Evan learned that lesson the hard way, because the city life is the exact opposite of the life that Evan seemed to be living. And I don't know if Evan was really ready for how wicked people can be. But let's go ahead and go back into this information. He called from the Malaga Cove Library. His location confirmed by personnel after some confusion which branch. Evans said that a guy at the gas station asked for help finding his dog. Evan offered to help, but there was no dog. The person who called himself Jose took over driving the van by intimidation. He had several, let's just call them sharp objects. The carjacker was high on substances. Evan had to wait until his captor finally fell asleep. We are unsure how long, and then fled the van with nothing but a sleeping bag. He seemed to be in a state of shock. When asked if he was hurt, he said not physically, but he commented that it seemed like gang-related intimidation techniques to make you do what they want. Now, hearing that response from Evan, when you are you okay? Are you hurt? And Evan says not physically. That tells you a lot about the type of person Evan is. You know what I mean? I think Evan's he's deeper than a lot of young men Evan's age. Let's put it like that. And as far as these intimidation tactics go, I know what they're referring to. And often it's not as blatant as like, I'm going to steal your car, you know, and you're going to be... No, it's different. Like I said, they prey on people who sometimes don't know how to say no. They prey on people who may not know how to stick up for themselves in certain situations. And they take advantage of people. So I don't think this is a situation where they're like, knife to Evan's throat. We're going to hold you captive and take your car. No, it's a way more complicated situation than that. And I understand that some people would be like, oh, why wouldn't you do something? People respond to things differently. And oftentimes when you're in these situations, sometimes you don't necessarily even know you're in one of those situations until you realize, like, oh, I've been getting taken advantage of this whole time. But at the end of the day, regardless of the details that happened in between, it appears to me that Evan was trying to be a good person and help someone, but it turned out that person started taking advantage of him. Let's go back into the information. When asked why he didn't report the van, he said the guy had already stole most of his belongings and everything stunk, and possible fear if the guy was in a gang of some kind of retaliation. The van was found ditched in downtown LA, filled with electronics and wires which Evan had no use for. He had downsized his belongings in preparation for this trip up the coast, so he was traveling with just the basics. Now, the electronics and wires, that sticks out to me because often people who have problems with substances, they will strip down electronic devices for like certain parts and copper, then they go sell it to get their fix. Usually when you find stuff like that, it's because someone is trying to finesse some money somehow. But let's go back into the information. The call lasted about 15 minutes. The call lasted about 15 minutes and was cut short before all the information could be explained. He said he would call back after he tried to process everything that had happened. Maybe even try to stop at a meditation center downtown he had heard of. No one has heard from him, and there has been no online activity since the call. We believe he may be in danger or having a mental health related crisis related to the incident with the man. He is an outdoorsman, so sleeping on the beach or hiking into the mountains would not be out of character, but not contacting his family or friends over Christmas raises more alarms. So I don't want to say too much here, and I'm no expert. We know that. I'm just some guy. But I've looked into quite a few cases, and I gotta say I have a confidence in this case that I usually don't have in a lot of the cases I look into or talk about. I do believe that Evan is most likely okay somewhere out there, but I mean, you never know. But my hopes are high. And like I said, I honest to God, I just feel like there's this strong possibility that Evan is out there somewhere. And hearing about the type of guy Evan is, yes, I do think it's strange that he didn't contact his family for Christmas. That's weird. But I also can't help but wonder if there's this possibility that maybe Evan just wanted to fall off the face of the earth for a second so he could just meditate like he likes to do and find himself. Maybe he wanted to cut himself off from everything for a little while. And if that's the case, then I understand, but people shouldn't do that without letting your family members know because, of course they're going to worry. I believe his brother said something along the lines of if he didn't know if maybe Evan felt like that phone call was enough to let his family know that, oh, I'm okay now, and now I'm about to go do my own thing for a little while. I do think that it's weird that he hasn't contacted his family, but looking at the details here, I think that it's also not far-fetched to believe that maybe he's just on some type of journey of his own, trying to do his own thing. And maybe he doesn't want to be contacted. Maybe he wants to cut everyone off for a second. But I don't necessarily think that's the case with his family. I'm just saying that Evan is very much that individual that may go on that spiritual journey of, I'm going to meditate and I'm going to just cut out all ties from outside life. I just had this traumatic experience happen to me when I tried to be a good person. I was already down here seeking a place to meditate, a place to unwind, and maybe, for all we know, Evan could be living on a beach somewhere, chilling, living it up, meditating, becoming one with himself. Or maybe there's something else going on. But as we get more updates, I will let you all know right here on this channel. So ring that notification bell, subscribe, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Please be respectful, hit that thumbs up button, and I will talk to you all in the next video.